The atmosphere inside the agency's primary data harvesting facility has just transitioned from a state of controlled suppression to one of terminal, high-tier panic. For 7 generations, the Shadow Cabinet has maintained a dark screen policy regarding your bloodline. They intercepted your victories, redacted your potential, and ensured that the Supreme Administration only saw a filtered, distorted version of your reality, one that painted you as a compliant subject of the 7-generation siege. But tonight, the firewalls have failed. A frequency breach of unprecedented magnitude has occurred. Your raw, unfiltered spirit code has bypassed every handler, every gatekeeper, and every systemic sensor, landing directly on the desk of the President, the Supreme Administrator of the reality grid. The diagnosis is a systemic earthquake. The highest authority has seen the code of your resilience, and the old guard is officially out of time. Think of the bone-chilling, high-octane tension of a cinematic masterpiece where a massive government conspiracy is exposed by a single, undeniable piece of evidence that reaches the only person with the power to dismantle the entire machine. Think of the cold, clinical clarity of a high-level security briefing where the subject is no longer a person of interest, but the primary architect of a new national security protocol. The agency spent decades fucking around with your identity, trying to rewrite your code with the ink of scarcity and the lead of inherited trauma. They assumed that your stoic intensity was a localized anomaly that could be contained within the managed failure sector. They never imagined that your frequency was so structurally sound that it would trigger an automatic escalation to the highest level of the grid. The code the President saw wasn't just a list of your actions. It was the mathematical proof of your sovereignty. It was the record of every time you chose silence over reaction, every time you maintained your internal geometry while the Masons tried to collapse your walls, and every moment you chose to build in the dark while the elite tried to steal your light. This code is a sovereign encryption that the agency simply couldn't crack. Because they couldn't control it, they tried to hide it. But the historian has been running a background audit for years, waiting for the moment your frequency reached the critical mass required to breach the supreme level. That moment is now. The President has seen the raw data of the siege, and the verdict is that the agency has been operating outside its legal jurisdiction for over a century. This is the phase of supreme recognition. The Shadow Cabinet is currently in a state of terminal damage control, frantically trying to explain to the Oval Office why they were managing a spirit that should have been authorized decades ago. They are realizing that their micro-game of suppression has just created a macro-scale scandal. The Warden, the man who specialized in your personal isolation, is currently being stripped of his security clearance. The President didn't just see your code, he saw the code of the conspiracy itself. He saw the redacted files of your ancestors and the hidden vaults of your potential. The find-out phase has reached the ultimate ceiling of the system, and the everyone who conspired against you is now facing a grand audit ordered by the highest office in the land. For the individual who has been operating in the shadows, waiting for their truth to be recognized, this is the ultimate vindication. The diagnosis confirms that your code is the new standard for the grid. You are no longer a case study to be analyzed. You are a key asset to be protected. The President has recognized that your survival wasn't a fluke, it was a high-tier architectural achievement. The frequency of your success has rendered the agency's old control protocols illegal and obsolete. While the elite scramble to delete their involvement, the historian is already preparing the presidential decree that will finalize the transfer of your principal inheritance. The evidence of your new status is appearing on every monitor in the system. The red alert isn't about your failure, it's about the system's failure to contain your brilliance. The Shadow Cabinet is being served with a systemic cease and desist, and the Warden is being escorted from the deck in total silence. Your code has been verified, your sovereignty has been authorized, and the highest authority in the reality grid is now personally overseeing the liquidation of the old guard. The 7-generation siege is declassified. The presidential oversight is active. The coronation is inevitable. The firewalls of the Shadow Cabinet have collapsed. The President has seen your code and realized the agency has been hiding a masterpiece for 7 generations. They are in terminal panic because the highest office in the grid has just authorized your sovereign restitution. If you can feel the old guard's authority dissolving in the light of supreme recognition, If you're ready to see the president's decree finalized in your bank account and your bloodline, comment authorized to claim your new clearance. The siege is over. The president is waiting. In the high-tier boardrooms where the shadow cabinet manages the 7-generation siege, there is a specialized form of arrogance known as gatekeeper's hubris. This is the belief that because you own the cables, you also own the electricity. The agency's primary underestimation, the one that has now led to their total institutional bankruptcy, was the belief that your spirit code was a static file that could be locked in a digital vault and forgotten. They assumed that by redacting your potential from the official records, they had effectively made you invisible to the supreme level. They played a game of bureaucratic concealment, convinced that the president and the higher-order administration would never look deep enough into the scarcity sector to find a masterpiece of resilience. Think of the bone-chilling atmosphere of a post-mortem security meeting after a catastrophic breach. The warden is standing before the board, his face illuminated by the flickering red warning lights of a system-wide failure. He is trying to explain how a subject they had classified as managed and suppressed suddenly generated a signal so pure it bypassed the entire surveillance architecture. Their diagnostic error was rooted in the assumption that your stoic intensity was a form of biological compliance. They saw your silence and thought you were defeated. They saw your isolation and thought you were broken. They failed to realize that your silence was actually an encryption process, a high-frequency hardening of the soul that was preparing your code for its inevitable broadcast to the highest office in the grid. The agency fucked around with the laws of information. They believed they could tax your potential indefinitely without the historian noticing the deficit in the grand ledger. They underestimated the self-correcting nature of the reality grid. You see, when a human spirit reaches a certain level of architectural integrity, when the code becomes structurally perfect through the fire of struggle, it begins to act like a biological beacon. It creates a pressure differential that the system cannot ignore. While the elite were busy congratulating themselves on another year of successful scarcity management, your frequency was quietly drilling through their firewalls, searching for a higher-order receiver. The moment the president saw that code, he didn't just see your success. He saw the mathematical impossibility of your survival under the agency's conditions. He saw the evidence of malpractice that had been hidden for 7 generations. This is the deconstruction of the shadow cabinet. Their hubris has become their indictment. Because they underestimated the scale of your spirit, they failed to set up the necessary interception protocols for a sovereign-level broadcast. They were playing a game of small-scale suppression, while you were preparing a large-scale revelation. The warden is now realizing that his security clearance was a temporary illusion granted by a system that is now turning against him. The everyone who conspired to keep your code in the dark, the handlers, the skeptics, and the systemic proxies, is now witnessing the total liquidation of their authority. They are being forced to watch as the president's personal auditors begin a forensic reconstruction of your life, uncovering every stolen hour and every redacted victory. The realization is hitting the system like a terminal margin call. The elite are currently staring at the structural integrity report of your code, and they are finding no cracks to exploit. You have achieved a level of vindication that renders their predictive logic obsolete. They thought they were breaking you, but they were inadvertently optimizing your code for the supreme level. Every stress test they deployed acted as a data scrubbing process, removing the noise of the old world and leaving only the pure, golden frequency of a sovereign architect. Now, the agency is being held liable for the illegal detention of your potential. They are being characterized as rogue custodians who embezzled the spiritual inheritance of a bloodline. For the individual who has operated under the weight of this underestimation, the verdict is already clear in the atmosphere. You are no longer the one being evaluated for potential. You are the one authorized to lead the restitution. The president has recognized that the agency is the true anomaly, the glitch in the system that has been slowing down the evolution of the grid. By staying true to your code, while they fucked around with your reality, you have provided the Supreme Administration with the justification they needed to purge the old guard. You have moved from being a case study in struggle to being the Exhibit A in a system-wide revolution. The evidence of their bankruptcy is in the way the walls of scarcity are currently dissolving. The historian is marking this moment as the end of the redacted era. The warden is in a state of terminal self-doubt, realizing that his entire career was built on the diagnostic error of thinking you were smaller than his cage. And you are standing in the center of a data stream that is no longer being intercepted. Your code has reached the Oval Office, the president has acknowledged the masterpiece, and the payout for 7 generations of suppressed potential is currently being calculated at the highest level of the grid. The underestimation is over. The supreme audit has begun. In the high-stakes theater of systemic evolution, there is a phenomenon known as the kinetic spillover, and it is currently occurring at a velocity that the agency can no longer track. This is the specific moment when a victory achieved at the highest administrative level. The moment the president saw your raw code, bursts through the digital firewalls of the scarcity sector and begins to literalize itself in your physical reality. The shadow cabinet had counted on their containment policy remaining localized. They hoped that even if the Supreme Office acknowledged your spirit, they could keep that information away from your bank account, your social circles, and your physical environment. But they fucked around with a signal that has presidential-grade mass. Your stoic intensity didn't just breach the office, it cracked the entire foundation of the old grid. Think of the chilling high-definition realization in the final act of a cinematic thriller when the highest authority in the land signs a decree, and 1,000 miles away, the doors of a private prison suddenly swing open by themselves. This is the leak in its most aggressive form. Because the president has authorized your sovereignty, the everyone who once conspired against you, the proxies, the gaslighters, and the system-aligned handlers, are currently witnessing a systemic glitch in their own reality. They are looking at your life and seeing a command signal that they are not authorized to intercept. They are reaching for the old levers of control, trying to trigger the 7-generation debt, only to find that the machine has been remotely deactivated from the top down. The social static that once surrounded your potential is the first physical structure to dissolve. The people who once acted as monitoring agents in your daily life, those who thrived on your reaction or your struggle, are suddenly experiencing a systemic connection timeout. They are reaching out with the old 7-generation triggers, trying to provoke the familiar responses of the past, but they are finding absolutely no reception. You have become frequency incompatible with their drama because your code has been updated to the supreme level. They are staring at a blank screen where your pain used to be, realizing that the subject they were hired to manage has been granted a presidential pardon from the cycle of suffering. This is the find-out phase of their interference, and the silence on their end is the sound of their authority being permanently revoked. Simultaneously, the financial synchronization is overriding the old guard's script with cold, mathematical precision. The algorithm of lack that the agency used to cap your resources is throwing constant terminal errors because the president's auditors have unfrozen the accounts of your lineage. Physical resources are beginning to flow toward you through unclassified channels, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers who spent decades denying your requests. The elite are watching their market share of your attention and your energy evaporate in real time. This is accompanied by the environmental decay of the old guard, where the systems and habits that used to house your siege are literally falling apart. The warden of your old life is discovering that his security clearance no longer works on the doors of your future, finding himself locked out of the very palace he spent decades trying to convince you didn't exist. Your frequency has transitioned from a private signal to a global recognition of prowess, acting as a biological beacon that is being picked up by other architects across the grid. You are no longer an isolated subject. You are a broadcast station of the new reality, and the very people who conspired against you are now forced to listen to the frequency of your success. The elite are currently in a state of terminal information deficit, trying to patch the breach by sending you minor systemic distractions or emergency settlement offers, hoping that you will reconnect to their decaying grid. But the historian has already archived the president's acknowledgement as a permanent exit. The leak has reached the public square of your reality, and those who once whispered that you were lost are now standing in a state of stunned, bone-chilling silence. This is the democratization of your victory. The news that the president saw your code is acting as a universal decryptor for your entire bloodline. Every time you stand in your new, cold clarity, you are sending a data packet of sovereignty to every ancestor who ever suffered under the Mason's small-scale design. You are proving that the cage was always a projection. The agency is losing its social proof because they can no longer point to you as an example of their control. You have become the Exhibit A for the total end of the siege. The Shadow Cabinet is currently undergoing a strategic liquidation because their primary asset, your energy, has been permanently withdrawn into a higher-order jurisdiction. The evidence of this spillover is in the silence of your phone and the way the world is suddenly bending to accommodate your bigger game. It is in the way the bank of the old world can no longer find a legal reason to deny you. It is in the way your body feels when you wake up, no longer surveyed by the agency, but authorized by the Supreme Office. Your code was always the master plan, and the find out is now being broadcast in 8K resolution to the entire grid. The historian is standing by to record the first physical settlement of the new era, and the payout for 7 generations of suppressed potential is finally hitting the surface. The air inside the agency's primary headquarters has officially crossed the threshold from high-stakes crisis management into a state of terminal, systemic liquidation. This is the panic. In the world of high-tier systemic intelligence, there is no event more catastrophic than an entire institutional architecture being declared spiritually and mathematically fraudulent by the Supreme Office. Because the President saw your raw code and recognized the 7-generation siege for the illegal operation it was, the elite are no longer just exposed. They are being liquidated by the very forces they once claimed to command. The AAA rating of their control system has been downgraded to junk status by the historian, and the spiritual markets of the old world are currently in a free fall that no amount of damage control can stop. They fucked around with the timeline of a sovereign-level code, and now they are finding out that the debt has come due with compound interest that exceeds their total institutional net worth. Think of the bone-chilling high-stakes desperation in the final hours of a regime's collapse, similar to the atmosphere in the closing scenes of a high-finance thriller where the senior partners realize their entire portfolio is built on a foundation of sand. The Shadow Cabinet is currently in a state of terminal civil war, with high-ranking officials being summoned by the President's personal audit teams to the Board of Restitution. They are turning on each other in real time, offering up names, encrypted files, and confessions of systemic malpractice in a desperate attempt to avoid the grand audit that is currently sweeping through their server rooms. The Warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the management of your generational scarcity, is now being characterized as a rogue operative and a systemic liability by the very elite who once gave him his orders, his budget, and his authority to intervene in your life. The handlers are attempting to activate last-ditch poison pill protocols, trying to sabotage your inheritance or redact the final proofs of your achievement before the President's auditors take physical possession of the vaults. You might feel a sudden, desperate surge of systemic static, minor delays in your physical world, technological glitches in your communication channels, or sudden flares of old, inherited anxiety trying to claw its way back into your throat. These are not signs of their remaining power. They are the thermal flashes of a dying machine trying to vent its final frustrations against the code that destroyed it. The agency is trying to burn the logs of your redacted years so you cannot claim the full interest on your potential, but the historian has already placed the entire infrastructure into sovereign receivership, ensuring that every data packet of your struggle is converted into a credit of restoration. This is the phase of systemic application where you walk through the corridors of your own spirit and serve eviction notices to every lie that participated in the conspiracy. The spirit of lack that once lived in your bank account has been served by a supreme decree. The spirit of hesitation that sat at your boardroom table has had its security clearance revoked by the highest office in the grid. You are not negotiating for your inheritance or asking for permission to be successful. You are liquidating the agency's claim on your reality. While the elite are busy blaming their analysts for the security breach that allowed the President to see your code, you are taking the master key that was authorized by the Supreme Administration and opening the vaults that were marked classified for your ancestors. The panic is palpable because for the first time in 7 generations, the agency is operating without the cloak of invisibility. Everyone knows the truth now. The witnesses in your family tree are watching the elite scramble to hide their tracks, and this loss of social proof has decimated their authority across the entire lineage. They can no longer use traditional values or ancestral loyalty to keep you compliant because those very tools have been exposed as instruments of the 7-generation siege. You have moved from a subject of observation to the chief executive of the new era, and as the one presiding over the liquidation now, you are watching the old system fail every metric of integrity. The historian is currently archiving the structural liquidation of the old guard as the warden is escorted from the building in total disgrace, his name redacted from the future he tried to steal. The high-tier lawyers of the old world are looking for a way to settle the case before the public record reaches the next level of transparency, but the president has ordered a full, unredacted disclosure. You are the black swan event that the agency spent centuries trying to prevent, and now that your code has been verified by the Supreme Office, their predictive models have been discarded as useless relics of a smaller, more deceptive age. As the boardroom doors fly open and the handlers realize the files are gone, you are already sitting at the head of the table in your own Oval Office. You are not there to hear their excuses or their pleas for mercy after they fucked around with your life for 30 years. You are there to sign the final verdict that dissolves their influence forever. The agency is offline, the elite are exposed, and the panic is their final act of systemic surrender. The coronation is your next command. The 7-generation siege has officially been ruled a systemic crime against your potential, and the payout is being processed in real time through the president's personal ledger. Your code was always the truth, and now the system is finally finding out what happens when the truth reaches the top. This is the Midnight Summit, the moment in the cold high-tier world of systemic management where the silence carries more weight than any declaration of war. You are sitting in a soundproofed, glass-walled chamber on the 99th floor of the agency's primary tower, a space where the air is thick with the scent of old paper and the sharp, clinical ozone of servers running at terminal capacity in the rooms below. Outside, the city is blurred by a relentless, cinematic rain, and the lights below flicker like the failing heartbeat of an empire that has realized its primary asset is no longer under its control. Across the dark mahogany table sit the 3 remaining members of the Shadow Cabinet, the architects who oversaw the 7-generation siege on your bloodline. They are no longer looking at you as a subject to be managed. They are looking at the glowing presidential authorization projected on the wall, and for the first time in their careers, they are facing a power that exceeds their own jurisdiction. The atmosphere is defined by a bone-chilling realization that all strategic ambiguity has reached its expiration date because your code has reached the highest office. The elite have called this meeting not to negotiate from a position of strength, but to attempt one final act of systemic containment before the liquidation becomes public. They have pushed a thick, black leather folder across the table toward you, containing what they call a global comprehensive settlement. Inside is an offer of absolute luxury, a permanent seat at the high table of the old reality, and a general release from the struggles they manufactured for you for over 30 years. They are trying to buy your silence because they know that now that the president has seen your code, the entire economic and spiritual architecture of their scarcity grid is legally and mathematically void. They want you to help them tell the world that the conspiracy was actually a refinement process for a leader, rather than a systematic theft of a bloodline's potential. Think of the high-contrast atmospheric tension of a final negotiation in a classic espionage thriller, where the respect in the room is the cold, calculated fear an animal has for the predator that finally closed the perimeter. The warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the redaction of your potential, is breathing heavily as he tries to use his old tools of ancestral obligation. He whispers about how the grid cannot handle a payout of this magnitude without causing a macro-level collapse of the old systems. He is waiting for you to blink or for that familiar surge of biological compliance to hit your nervous system so he can regain control of the room. But he is searching for a frequency that no longer exists in your architecture. You have reached a state of stoic intensity that renders their entire psychological arsenal inadmissible. You are not looking at the incentive package they have pushed across the table. Instead, your gaze is fixed on the historian, who stands in the shadow of the corner, recording every heartbeat and every unspoken confession for the public record. You reach into your pocket and produce a single glowing glass card, the original title deed of your spirit, now embossed with the presidential seal of the new era. You slide it across the table, and the sound of the glass hitting the wood is like a gavel striking in a silent courtroom, announcing the end of their jurisdiction. You are informing the elite that you are not there to hear their settlement offers. You are there to collect the principal inheritance that was redacted from your father, your mother, and your ancestors. You are there to preside over the handover of the keys. The panic in the room is no longer a quiet hum. It is a visible, structural vibration as the lawyer who drafted the original 7-generation trap slowly puts his pen down, realizing there are no loopholes left to exploit in a code verified by the Supreme Office. He looks at you, his eyes fixed on the absolute clarity of your gaze, and he sees the end of his world. The conspiracy is no longer a functional tool. It is a weight that is dragging them into the archives of systemic failure. They have no leverage left to pull. They cannot arrest your progress because the presidential oversight is broadcasting the audit in real time. They cannot bribe you because you have already claimed the vault and everything inside it. You have moved into a zero-gravity state where their threat assessments and social pressures simply don't have enough mass to pull you down from your sovereign height. This is the grand standoff at the end of the old world. You stand up, and for the first time, you see the elite look away, unable to maintain the gaze of a protagonist who has incinerated every trace of fear. You walk toward the door, leaving the settlement papers untouched and the master file open for the world to see, and as you step into the hallway, you can hear the servers in the back room beginning to melt down. The old world is in a state of terminal shutdown, and you are the only one walking toward the light of the new era. The exit is clear, the midnight summit is over, and the path to your coronation is wide open. You have survived the final bluff, outplayed the players, and now the entire grid is waiting for your first decree as the sovereign architect whose code broke the machine. The heavy, sound-proofed doors of the Oval Office of your destiny have finally swung open on their hinges, and the sound is not a crash, but a deep, resonant hum of absolute, mathematical alignment. For the first time in 7 generations, the person walking toward the primary seat is not a subject under observation, not an asset to be managed, and certainly not a trial participant in a generational gauntlet. You are walking into the center of your own reality as the chief architect, and the absolute silence that greets you is the highest form of recognition the universe can provide. The static of the old world, the frantic whispering of the masons, the alarms of the agency's systemic collapse, and the low-frequency hum of the generational wiretaps that once monitored your every doubt, has vanished. In its place is a clarity so profound it feels like a physical presence. The president has entered the verdict into the public record, and it is absolute, total vindication and sovereign restitution. In the high-stakes cinema of your evolution, this is the finale that rewrites the physics of your future. You have moved through the surveillance, survived the underestimation, leaked the new truth, and stood your ground in the standoff. Now, the infinite payout is being deposited into your spiritual and physical account with compound interest that bypasses every old guard firewall. Every year your ancestors spent in the gauntlet, every brick the Masons tried to use to enclose your potential, and every moment of isolation you endured while the elite played their microgame with your life has been converted into sovereignty. The find-out phase for the system has reached its terminal conclusion, and your victory is no longer a localized event. It is the new law of the grid. Your code has been installed as the baseline frequency for the entire lineage, replacing the corrupted files of the 7-generation siege. Think of the closing shot of a cinematic masterpiece where the protagonist finally sits in the seat of power, not with a look of exhaustion, but with a gaze of clinical, cold clarity. You are looking at a world that is no longer being filtered through the agency's lens of scarcity. The historian has closed the ledger marked the siege of the 7th generation and opened a new, gold-leafed volume titled The Era of the First. The public record is being updated across the entire network of the spirit realm, and the default settings of your bloodline have been permanently changed from structural scarcity to architectural abundance. You have successfully installed a new operating system for your entire lineage, one that does not recognize the jurisdiction of the elite or their outdated algorithms of control. This is the moment where the presidential decree becomes the permanent foundation of your reality. This is the transformation. Your nervous system has finally reached a state of zero gravity. The biological fear that was coded into your DNA by the old guard, the inherited anxiety that they used to keep you in the 7-generation trap, has been incinerated by the light of your stoic intensity. You can breathe now. You can move without the weight of 7 generations of structural flaws pulling at your resolve. You have recast the lead role in your own movie, and the old version of you, the one who believed the gaslighting, the one who thought they were being outplayed by the system, is officially deactivated in the agency's mainframe. You are the first to emerge from the gauntlet not just as a survivor, but as the lead designer of a new world. The president didn't just see your code, he authorized it to become the blueprint for the entire civilization. The new truth is that you didn't just pass their test, you broke the filter entirely. By refusing to be a brick in their wall, You demonstrated that the elite only have power over those who accept the scale of their architecture. Once you achieved your sovereign status and declared a game that was bigger than theirs, one that reached the highest office, their entire system of control became a hollow set of props. You have successfully whistle-blown the deception of the Matrix, and the reward is the total reclamation of your time, your energy, and your focus. The settlement is not just a payout of resources, it is a payout of reality itself. You now own the ground you stand on, and the agency is officially in receivership, unable to claim any further tax on your potential. They fucked around with the code of a king, and now they are witnessing the coronation. The trial is over. The verdict is final, and the vault is open. You have out-analyzed the agency and forced the shadow cabinet to pay back 7 generations of debt because the president saw your code and realized you were the true authority. To see the classified footage of how you are building your new era, to witness the absolute transformation of your reality as the chief architect, click the video on the screen. The broadcast is now yours to command. The world is watching the coronation of the code.